Rain whispered against the windows, steady and calm, as Emma stood alone in the hallway of her uncle's countryside home. It was her first visit in years. The air smelled like cedar and fresh coffee, and every sound in the house felt gentle, almost too gentle. Uncle Henry had gone to sleep after dinner, leaving the place so still that Emma could hear the soft ticking of the wall clock. She hadn't planned to stay this long. Her life in Seattle was busy, loud, full of people and plans. But something about the quiet here drew her in, as if the house held memories waiting to speak. She walked slowly down the hall, glancing at the framed photos on the wall, her mother smiling, her father standing beside Uncle Henry, everyone frozen in laughter from years ago. Her chest tightened. Those smiles belonged to a time that no longer existed. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass in rhythm. Emma found herself walking toward the old study, a room she barely remembered. Uncle Henry used to work there when she was a child, writing, drawing, always lost in thought. She hesitated at the door, slightly open, a faint glow of light spilling into the dark hallway. That was strange. She was sure he'd turned everything off before going to bed. Curiosity pushed her forward. She tapped softly on the door, but heard no answer. Inside, the small desk lamp burned low, casting a warm, tired glow across stacks of old papers and books. The air smelled faintly of dust and ink. She stepped inside, her footsteps careful on the wooden floor. The study looked frozen in time. Shelves of books lined the walls, and an old typewriter sat quietly in the corner. A few candles stood on the desk, melted halfway down, as if someone had sat there many nights lost in thought. Emma's eyes moved across the desk and stopped. A small wooden box sat in the center, open just enough to reveal folded envelopes inside. At first she thought it was just old mail, but as she came closer, her breath caught. Her own name was written on one of them. The handwriting looked delicate and familiar, like her mother's. Emma's heart began to race. She picked up the letter, her hands trembling. The paper was yellowed with age. Across the top corner was her mother's name, written in that same gentle curve she remembered from old birthday cards. But that couldn't be possible. Her mother had passed away when Emma was 12. She hadn't written to her since. Her pulse quickened. She sat down in the chair by the desk, staring at the letters spread before her. Some were addressed to her, others to her mother, and a few had her uncle's name on them. None of them had been mailed. All of them looked carefully kept, almost protected. She reached for the one on top. It was dated nearly 10 years ago. "My dear Emma, you're growing fast. I hope Henry keeps these safe for you until the time is right. There are things about our family, about love and choices, that you will one day understand." Emma's eyes filled with tears before she could finish. Her mother's handwriting, her mother's words, it felt like a voice reaching through time. She pressed the paper to her chest, shaking her head. Why hadn't she seen these before? Why would her uncle keep them hidden? She opened another letter. It was shorter, written in a rush. "Henry, promise me you'll tell her when she's ready. Don't let her grow up without knowing who we really were." Emma froze. The words were directed to her uncle. "Promise me you'll tell her." Tell her what? Her heart thudded harder. The letters weren't just keepsakes. They were secrets. And her uncle, who had always seemed distant, gentle, quiet, had been carrying them all these years. A mix of confusion and fear rose inside her. She looked toward the hallway. The door to Henry's bedroom was still closed, faint light peeking from beneath. She could hear the soft rhythm of his breathing, calm and steady in sleep. Emma turned back to the letters. She shouldn't read them. She told herself they weren't meant for her yet. But her hands refused to stop. She opened another envelope. This one written in a deeper, steadier hand, her uncle's handwriting. "I've kept every word she wrote. I couldn't destroy them, though I know I should have. She trusted me with her truth, and I've guarded it from Emma because I didn't know how to explain it. How do I tell her what her mother and I shared? How do I tell her that love isn't always simple?" Emma's breath caught. Her eyes widened, scanning the page again. The words were gentle but heavy, full of emotion she didn't understand yet. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her pulse hammering in her ears. What did her uncle mean what they shared? The rain outside grew louder, wind pressing against the windows. The world seemed to close in around her. Her uncle had always been kind to her, protective, almost like a father figure after her parents were gone. But now, as she looked at the letters, she realized there was a history she'd never known, something hidden under all that quiet kindness. She stood up, pacing slowly across the small room. Every photo on the wall, every object in the study suddenly felt different, like puzzle pieces rearranging into a picture she wasn't ready to see. In one photo, taken long before she was born, her mother stood beside Uncle Henry. They looked young, bright, happy, too happy. The way his hand rested lightly on her mother's shoulder didn't seem like a casual gesture. It was intimate, gentle, familiar. Emma's throat tightened. She looked at the photo again, then back at the letters. A strange mix of sadness and disbelief washed over her. She had come here expecting peace, maybe nostalgia. Instead, she had walked into the heart of a story she didn't know she was part of. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Emma froze, clutching the letters. The sound came from her uncle's room. His voice followed, soft, sleepy. Emma. Her heart jumped. She turned toward the door, eyes wide. He was awake. The letters trembled in her hands as she whispered to herself, "What did I just find?" The moment hung heavy in the air, the sound of rain filling the silence. The secret she had uncovered was alive now, too real to ignore. And she knew, in that instant, that everything about her family, the love she thought she understood, was about to change forever. The light in the study flickered as she stood, frozen, listening to her uncle's slow footsteps approaching down the hall. Each step sounded heavier than the last. The storm outside raged, but the real storm was inside her, 1,000 unspoken questions crashing in her heart. When his shadow appeared at the door, she knew there was no turning back. The night she thought would be quiet had just become the night she discovered everything. Uncle Henry stood in the doorway, his gray hair messy, his eyes still heavy from sleep. The rain outside had softened into a slow drizzle, and the quiet inside the house felt almost fragile. Emma froze where she was, holding the letters tightly in her hands. He looked at her, then at the open box on the desk. And a faint sigh escaped his lips. "You weren't supposed to find those," he said softly. Emma's heart pounded. "You hid them from me," she said. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with confusion. "These letters are from my mother. Why didn't you ever tell me about them?" Henry walked slowly into the room, his eyes tired and kind, but shadowed by something deeper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out and touched one of the envelopes gently, as if it were something fragile. "I promised her," he finally said. "Your mother asked me to keep them safe until you were ready." Emma frowned. "Ready for what?" He hesitated. His silence felt heavy, like he was weighing every word. "She didn't want you to carry her secrets too early," he said. "She wanted you to grow up without the burden of her past." Emma shook her head. "Her past?" she repeated. "What does that even mean, Uncle Henry? You kept her voice from me. You kept her from me." Henry looked down. I know," he said quietly, "and I've lived with that guilt every day." Emma placed the letters on the desk and sat back, struggling to process what she was hearing. The air in the room felt thick with memories. She picked up one letter, again her mother's handwriting, so delicate, so alive. She read aloud, her voice shaking slightly. "Henry, promise me you'll tell her the truth when she's old enough. Don't let her grow up believing lies about who we were." She looked up at him, her eyes wet. "The truth about what?" "About you and her." Henry's lips parted slightly, but no words came. He took a deep breath and leaned against the desk, looking out the window. "There are things," he said slowly, "that are hard to explain because they don't fit neatly into right or wrong. Your mother and I shared something before she met your father. Something beautiful, but complicated. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. You loved her, she whispered. He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw something raw and unspoken. Yes, he said simply. I loved her long before she ever looked at me as just her brother by heart. We met when we were young and we thought love could fix everything. But life had its own plans. She met your father and I had to let her go. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. Emma felt a strange mix of sadness and shock. This wasn't the story she expected. Her entire life, her family had been a picture of stability. She never imagined there were hidden emotions running beneath it. So all this time, she said softly, you've been keeping her memory locked away because of that. Henry nodded. After she passed, I didn't know how to face you. Every time I looked at you, I saw her eyes. The same kindness, the same stubborn heart. I wanted to tell you everything, but I was afraid it would only hurt you. Emma stared at the letters, each one like a thread connecting pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed. You thought you were protecting me, she said, but you only left me in the dark. He lowered his gaze. You're right, he whispered. I was selfish. I wanted to keep her memory my way. I wasn't ready to let anyone else have a teeth in you. The storm outside had faded into quiet, the soft dripping of water from the roof filling the silence between them. Emma looked down at the letters again. One was still sealed, its paper slightly wrinkled. She opened it carefully. Inside was a note written in her mother's gentle hand. If Emma ever finds this, tell her that love is never something to be ashamed of. Tell her that the heart remembers what the world forgets. Emma's lips trembled as she read the words aloud. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Henry's eyes were distant, lost in memories that refused to fade. Finally, Emma broke the silence. You loved her, but she chose someone else, she said softly. And you still took care of me after she was gone. Henry nodded. Because you were part of her, he said. And because I made a promise to love you, like my own. Emma's throat tightened. For the first time, she saw not just her uncle, but a man who had quietly carried grief, loyalty, and love all at once. Every smile he'd given her, every visit, every word of comfort, it all came from that quiet, hidden love for the woman they both missed. She walked toward the desk and gathered the letters into a neat pile. Why didn't she ever tell me? She asked softly. Why did she hide it? Henry smiled faintly. Because your mother believed in peace. She didn't want you to grow up questioning love or resenting anyone. She wanted you to have a simple heart. Emma took a deep breath, tears glimmering in her eyes. But now I know, she said. And I think she'd want me to forgive you for keeping it. Henry looked at her with surprise. You forgive me. Emma nodded slowly. Yes, because you didn't do it out of cruelty. You did it out of love. The words hung softly between them, like sunlight filtering through the clouds. Henry's eyes softened with relief. You sound just like her, he said quietly. She would have been proud of you. Emma smiled through her tears. Maybe that's because she's still here, she said, touching her chest. In me. In you. In these letters. They sat in silence for a moment, both looking at the small wooden box. The air felt lighter now, filled not with secrets, but with understanding. Then Emma looked at him again. There's something else, she said. You wrote your own letter. To me, but you never sent it. Henry froze. You read that? She nodded. I had two. It said you didn't tell me because you didn't want to change how I saw you. Henry looked away. Yes, he admitted. I didn't want you to see me as a man who failed. I wanted to be the uncle who kept things together. Emma smiled softly. You didn't fail, she said. You just loved someone deeply. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. He looked at her, his eyes glistening. Thank you, Emma. She reached across the table and held his hand. For a moment, time seemed to pause the rain. The past, the words they'd never said. Everything felt quiet, peaceful. The truth had finally found its way out. not as a wound, but as a bridge between two lonely hearts that had both lost the same woman in different ways. Outside, the clouds began to break apart, letting in a faint glow of dawn. Emma stood, gathered the letters, and said softly, "Let's read them together. All of them." Henry nodded, and together they sat by the window as the sun rose. The letters spread before them like pieces of a story finally told. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt full of love of memory and of peace, long delayed but finally found. Morning came with a soft gray sky, and the smell of wet earth drifting through the windows. Emma barely slept. The letters kept replaying in her mind her mother's gentle words, her uncle's quiet pain. She sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. Uncle Henry was outside feeding the birds as if everything were normal. But she could tell his thoughts were somewhere else. When he came back inside, their eyes met. Neither of them spoke at first. The air was heavy again, filled with unspoken things. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "Uncle Henry," she said softly, "I need to know everything. Please don't hide anymore." He paused by the window, his back turned to her. "You already know the truth, Emma," he said quietly. "No," she replied. "I only know pieces. I want to understand what really happened between you and my mother. Not the version in letters, the real one." Henry turned to face her. His eyes looked older than she remembered, filled with years of memories and regrets. He sat across from her, hands clasped together. "Your mother and I met long before she met your father," he began. "We were both young, full of dreams. She wanted to travel. I wanted to write. We spent summers by the lake, talking for hours about everything. We never planned to fall in love. Just happened." Emma listened in silence, her heart beating fast. His voice was calm, but there was a tremor beneath it. The kind that comes from carrying something for too long. "When your mother met your father," Henry continued, "I thought it would pass. I thought it was just a friendship. But I could see it in her eyes she loved him differently. And I couldn't hate her for that. How could I? She was chasing her happiness." He stopped, his gaze distant. "I left for a few years after that. I couldn't stay and watch her build a life I wasn't part of. When I came back, she was married and you were just a baby. I told myself I'd let go, but the truth is I never really did." Emma swallowed hard, her chest tightening. She'd grown up seeing her uncle as strong and calm, someone who never showed much emotion. But now, seeing him like this, vulnerable, honest, it changed everything. "So you kept it all inside," she said. "All these years." Henry nodded slowly. "Yes, I didn't want to cause pain. Your father was my friend too. And after your mother passed, I promised her I'd protect you. I couldn't let the past ruin what little peace we had left." He leaned back, his eyes glistening. "Every time I saw you, I felt the same warmth I once felt around her. You reminded me of her laugh, her eyes, even the way she used to stand at the window when it rained. But I was terrified you'd find out and think badly of her or of me." Emma's throat tightened. "You didn't need to be afraid," she whispered. "Love isn't something wrong. It just changes." He smiled faintly. "You sound like her," he said. They sat in silence for a moment. The clock ticked softly, and the rain had started again, light and steady. Then Emma said, "What about the letters she wrote? Did she want me to know about your love?" Henry nodded. "Yes, I think she wanted you to understand that love can be messy, but still pure. She didn't want me to hide forever, but I wasn't brave enough to tell you until now." Emma reached for the stack of letters on the table. The paper had softened with time, but her mother's handwriting still felt alive. She opened one more and read aloud. "Henry, you're reading this after I'm gone? Please tell Emma that love doesn't end when someone leaves, it just changes shape. Tell her that even broken hearts can still love deeply." Emma looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "She knew you'd still be carrying this," she said softly. "She knew you'd never stop loving her." Henry's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't, and I never will. But I think, for the first time, I can finally let her rest." He stood and walked toward the old cabinet in the corner. From a small drawer, he pulled out a faded photograph. It was of him and her mother standing by the lake, sunlight on their faces. He handed it to Emma. "That's the day we promised each other we'd always remember," he said, "even if life took us in different directions." Emma looked at the photo for a long moment. There was something so gentle about their expressions, young, hopeful, full of life. "You really loved her," she said quietly. Henry nodded. "With everything I had." She placed the photo down carefully, then looked at him. "Uncle Henry," she said, "I think she'd want you to forgive yourself. You did everything she asked. You protected me even when it hurt you." He smiled faintly, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I tried, but I think I needed you to find those letters. Maybe it was time for both of us to let her go." The room felt lighter, the years of silence melting into something peaceful. Emma stood and walked to the window. The rain had stopped and sunlight was breaking through the clouds. She turned back to him and said, "You know, I used to think love was simple, but now I think it's just real people trying their best to do the right thing." Henry chuckled softly. "That's exactly what your mother used to say." They shared a quiet smile. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt alive with memories instead of secrets. Emma gathered the letters and placed them gently back in the wooden box. "I'm going to keep these," she said. "They're part of her, part of you, and part of me." Henry nodded. "They belong to you now." As she closed the lid, she noticed a smaller envelope hidden at the bottom. It was unmarked. She opened it carefully, and inside was a single sheet of paper written in her mother's familiar hand. "Henry, if Emma ever asks about us, tell her this. Love never breaks families apart. Silence does." Emma held the letter tightly. Her mother's words echoed in her heart, soft but powerful. She looked up at Henry. She didn't want silence anymore, she said. He nodded slowly. No, she wanted peace. The morning after the storm felt different. The clouds had lifted and the house was filled with the golden glow of sunlight for the first time in days. Emma stood by the window, holding a cup of coffee, staring at the quiet garden outside. The grass sparkled with dew and birds hopped between the trees. Everything looked peaceful. Almost like the world had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Uncle Henry was sitting at the kitchen table, reading one of her mother's old letters again. His face was calm now. The lines of worry softened. The air between them was lighter, no longer filled with secrets or tension. Emma walked over and sat beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was warm. "I finished reading all the letters last night," Emma said finally. "Every single one." Henry looked up and smiled gently. "And what did you find?" She took a deep breath. "I've found her heart. I've found your truth. And I found out that love doesn't disappear, just waits to be understood." He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. "Your mother believed that too." Emma placed her hand over his. "She also believed in forgiveness," she said softly. "And I think she'd be happy to know that we finally found it." Henry looked at her for a long moment. "You've grown into someone she'd be proud of," he said. "You remind me of her more every day, her kindness, her strength." Kima smiled faintly. "I think she's been guiding me all along, even to those letters." They sat in quiet reflection for a while, watching sunlight move across the wooden floor. Then Emma said, "I used to think I came here just to visit. But now I realize I came here to discover something she wanted me to know all along." Henry leaned back in his chair. "What's that?" "That love isn't always neat or perfect," she said. "It's messy, complicated, but still beautiful. It survives even when people don't. That's what I discovered." He smiled, nodding slowly. "That's exactly what she wanted you to understand." The clock ticked gently in the background. Henry stood, stretching a little, and walked to the window. "I can finally breathe again," he said quietly. "For years I felt trapped by the past. But after talking to you, I feel free." Emma joined him by the window. "You did the right thing," she said. "You loved her in silence because you respected her life. That takes strength, not shame." He turned to her, his expression soft. Maybe, but I wish I had told her one more time how much she meant to me before she left. Right. Emma shook her head gently. You didn't have to. She knew. Every letter she wrote proves it. She never stopped thinking about you. Henry smiled faintly, his eyes shining with emotion. Maybe you're right. Maybe she did know. The sunlight warmed their faces as they stood there, two generations connected by the same love and loss. The pain that had once filled the house had turned into something peaceful, a kind of quiet gratitude. After breakfast, Emma went out to the garden. The air was crisp and full of life. She carried the wooden box of letters with her and found a spot under the old maple tree, the same one her mother used to sit beneath when she visited as a child. She opened the box and took out the last letter, the one that had never been read aloud. Her mother's voice seemed to echo in her mind as she read, My dear Emma, when you find this, remember that the people who love you most are not the ones who never hurt. They are the ones who never stop caring, no matter how time changes them. Don't let silence keep you from the truth. Speak your heart. Love freely. Emma closed her eyes and let the words sink in. They weren't just meant for her, they were meant for both of them. Her mother had left these letters to heal what life had separated. She looked back toward the house where Uncle Henry stood on the porch, watching her with a soft smile. For the first time, Emma saw him not just as her uncle, but as a man who had lived through deep love, loss, and loyalty. She waved him over. He joined her beneath the tree, his hands tucked into his sweater pockets. You found the last one, he asked. Emma nodded. She wanted us to stop hiding, to live. Henry looked at the box, then at her. Maybe it's time we do that. They sat together under the tree, sharing stories about her mother, funny moments, childhood memories, the way she used to hum while cooking. Each story brought laughter, and sometimes quiet tears. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was connection. As the sun rose higher, Emma said softly, You know, I used to wonder why you never got married. I thought maybe you just didn't want to. Henry smiled gently. I wanted to, he said. But after your mother, no one ever felt right. I don't regret it. Some loves aren't meant to be replaced, they're meant to be remembered. Emma looked at him, her heart full. Then you did exactly what she asked of you. You kept her memory safe. He nodded. And now it's your turn. She touched the box beside her. I'll take good care of it, she said. But I'll also live. That's what she'd want too. The day passed quietly. Before evening, Emma packed her things. It was time to return to her life in the city. She placed the box carefully in her bag, her fingers brushing over the lid one last time. Uncle Henry stood by the doorway as she prepared to leave. You're welcome here anytime, he said warmly. She smiled. I'll come back soon. But next time, we'll talk about the future, not just the past. He chuckled softly. I'd like that. As Emma got into her car, she looked back at the house. The rain-soaked earth glowed under the sunlight. Her uncle waved from the porch just like he used to when she was a child. For a moment, she imagined her mother standing beside him, smiling, proud of them both. The drive back felt peaceful. The world outside the window seemed brighter, every mile a little lighter than the one before. She didn't feel haunted by the truth anymore. She felt grounded by it. The past was no longer a secret, was part of her strength when she reached the city. She opened her apartment window and let the evening breeze in. The box of letters sat on her table. She opened it one last time and whispered, Thank you, Mom. I finally understand. She took out a notebook and began to write her own letter, not to the past, but to the future. To the next generation, remember that love isn't about perfection. It's about honesty, forgiveness, and holding on to what's real, even when life changes everything. She smiled as she wrote, realizing that her mother's story and Henry's story had now become part of hers. Some discoveries change what you know. Others change who you are. Emma had discovered both, and as she looked out at the golden sky fading into dusk, she felt her mother's presence not as a memory, but as a quiet peace in her heart. The truth she had once feared had given her something far greater: understanding, love, and the strength to keep moving forward. That was what she discovered, that love never truly leaves. It just finds a new way to stay.